Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways, Torah Life Ministries.
Hello everybody, it's Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries, and here we are with this week's Torah Parashah. We are up to the reading number 35, and this is Numbers 421 to 789. And I've been waiting to get up to this one because at Torah Life Ministries we teach about health, and we also like to focus on modesty because those are two areas that are unpopular in the teachings today when it comes to the scriptures or when it comes to the world. And these are two of the most important parts of it all, because the enemy is going to use many different ways to get to us. And through our poor health and through the immodest living we live, this is ways that he brings us over to his side and takes us away from Yeshua. And Yeshua said, we are to be healthy, and we also need to be modest. And he said the times will be just like the times of Sodom and Gomorrah when I come back. And the main thing going on with that time was the massive immodesty that was going around the world back then. So it's a very immodest time we live in. And the reason I bring this up is because in the teachings this week it says, in Numbers 5:1, it says, Yahweh said to Moses, order the people of Israel to expel from the camp everyone with Tazarit. And we discussed Tazarit in previous readings, which was a discharge of the body. And there were many different reasons behind it. Some people thought it was a leprosy or some type of leprosy. But there were many reasons behind it. And the sages used to think that it was for a Lashon Hara, bad talking or talking bad about somebody, that people would get this. And the Tazarit wasn't just a skin disorder. It got into the walls of the house and on the type of clothing, the fabrics, and so on. And one of the punishments for it was, or one of the cures or punishments, depending on how you want to look at it, was that the person is to be expelled from the community or told to be outside the community. And it says, so they won't defile the camp of the people that are living among you. And this is a very important thing, because we have to understand whenever somebody is destroying a community or a club or a get-together or a gathering, the only cure is going to be that they change their ways. But if they're going to continue in their same ways, they must be expelled outside of the community, away from everyone else. Because slowly but surely, they're going to start to get to everyone and talk to everyone. It's almost like a congregation or assembly, or even a church, if you want to call it a church. I like to call it a congregation or assembly. But it's like if there's one person there that just doesn't agree with what's being taught, and they have a different view of opinion, instead of respecting the teacher and everyone else and talking to the teacher, they start going around the congregation and talking to everyone one by one. A little person here on his side, a little person here on his side, and slowly but surely they start defiling the community. That person needs to be expelled from the community, because they are not holy and they are not keeping peace among the community. And that's the same thing that happened with Tazarit. Slowly but surely, one person was contaminated, then another person would be contaminated, and those people would contaminate more people. Before you knew it, the whole community was contaminated. And I'll go out to say one of the major points of Torah in general is to separate the clean from the unclean, and to do that, all unclean needs to be expelled from the clean, or separated, needs to be taken apart or taken away from the community. And Tazarit is a great example of that and what needs to be done. So when we look at this, we look at what's destroying the community today as a whole and what's destroying society today. And I would say it's the immodest living. And we ask ourselves, well, what is immodesty? Or what is modesty? And here's the problem, folks. The scriptures clearly define what modesty is. When Adam and Eve sinned and their eyes were open to reveal what was going on, they realized they were naked, and they covered themselves, not all their flesh, they just covered their private parts with these bikinis made of fig leaves. But Yahweh said that's not good enough. That is not good enough. And he showed them what modesty was by completely covering their bodies. They covered their bodies so they would not expose their nakedness. Not their private parts, but their nakedness. So he covered their bodies. So he clearly defines what modesty is and modesty isn't. And the world today, it's different. It's opposite today. Where the scriptures say it's shame to show your nakedness, the world today says, people take pride in showing their nakedness. They go to a gym and work out and half naked at a gym, so they could have a nice body, so they can go out in the world and walk around naked and show off their flesh, and so on. And that goes against what the Bible says. The Bible tells us, no, the only person that should be seeing our flesh and seeing our body is our spouses. And that's it. So we have this difference of the world, and it says in the scriptures, there is a way before each person that seems right but ends in death. You see, people want to do what they think is right and what they think is best, but that's not the answer. There's a way set before us that regardless of how we feel with our sin nature that we were born into, there's a way that Yahweh wanted it. And he shows us in the scriptures what that way was. He shows us in his Torah, and we have to take action and follow it. And if we're truly believers in Messiah, we're going to go ahead and do that. But we look at this issue of modesty from a very controversial point, because what the enemy likes to do with his tazarit or his lashon hara or his destroying the community, he likes to get in there and create confusion. And he likes people to get emotional over what they believe instead of what the scriptures say, or how they feel in their sinful nature or desire, instead of taking on the nature of Messiah. And we look at this, and there are no issues in the scriptures that come down to gray areas. There are black and white areas. But when people's emotions get involved, then they become gray areas, and that's why there's so much confusion. The scriptures are clear on things like diet, for example. It's very clear what we should be eating, when we should be eating it, and how we should be eating it. But everyone wants to have their own idea based on their own feelings and thoughts and so on. They don't even base it on their experiences as much as they do base it on their feelings of what they want, and then they'll make excuses. I know people that make up all the excuses in the world why M&Ms could be okay for them, or something like chocolate being healthy. But this is not true. So it's clearly defined how the body was designed and what we need or what we don't need. But getting back to this week's teaching and this whole idea of the enemy getting in some way to destroy the community, we look at a very controversial topic. And again, there are many controversial topics according to the scripture. That's only because of our own lack of understanding and our sinful nature and our emotional desires. Not because the way we design is very clear, and it is straightforward and black and white. And as we learn, we see how black and white it really is. And we see that these controversial subjects, or these subjects that seem to have gray areas, really didn't have gray areas at all. It was just our lack of understanding. Well, I'm going to bring up a very controversial, supposedly gray area according to people's standards today. That, it concerns modesty, it concerns destroying the community. And hear me out before you jump to a conclusion on this one. The issue is modesty, and the issue comes down to how we are to appear before Yahweh. Specifically, I want to look at what is modest for a woman. And specifically, what is modest for a woman concerning head coverings, or at least the way she should keep her hair. And you might not think that this has something to do with this week's Torah portion, but it actually does, because the scriptures show us that, we are to appear in a modest way, in a modest fashion. And the scriptures show us what modesty truly is. And we look at the world today, and we could just look at what is modest according to the scriptures. Well, we could see it here. The world and the scriptures are two different places, two different things. So one great easy way to define what is truly modest or truly of Yahweh is just look what the world is made of and just think of the opposite. I always say I learn a lot from people that don't really aren't righteous, because I just do the opposite and I'm righteous. Or I learn a lot from how to be successful from unsuccessful people, because I see what they're doing and I do the opposite. Well, same thing with the world today. What does the world do today? They flaunt the bodies and the flesh. And here's the thing: head coverings. Now, I've always brought up head coverings from an issue of, from a scriptural standpoint. Yes, I won't touch it because it's too controversial and too many people get very emotional about it and so on. And it takes time for people to learn. I tell all women out there, if you're not convicted to wear a head covering, then don't do it if you're not convicted. But if you read the scriptures and you are convicted, how can you not do it? And I have a lot of teachings on my on my Torah Life TV show about head coverings and the amazing feeling a woman would take when she had some sort of conviction about covering a head, whether it's because, some strange man other than her husband said your hair looks beautiful, or whether it was because a woman just said, I need to cover my head, and the different ways they were treated by men and people when they did cover their heads versus when they didn't. Now, what is the significance of this? Well, the significance comes down to the hair is a woman's beauty. And I will go so far to say the hair is a woman's sexiness. The hair makes a woman sexy. And the world knows it today. They spend hours and hours fixing up these fashion models, their hair, to make it all sexy and everything else. And you put that in a combination with the makeup and then the clothing, the tight clothes, or the flesh hanging out of the clothes. But it's the hair. I mean, you could have some of the most beautiful women in the world with their features on their face and their makeup and their flesh showing and their tight clothing and everything else. But you shave their head, they don't look that attractive anymore. You see, there's some sexiness to the hair. And it says in this week's Torah Parashah, it tells us about a woman that is caught in adultery, or if a husband is suspecting through a feeling of guilt that his woman is caught in adultery. And it says this here in Numbers 5:15. He is to bring his wife to the priest, to the Kohen, along with an offering for her. And it goes down to say here in 5:18 of Numbers that the woman is to unbind her hair, or they are to unbind the woman's hair. And this is to say or suspect or lead to that a modest woman was a woman whose hair was bound. Now, it doesn't specifically say head covering, but I will say it leads to the idea that a woman had covered her head, or a modest woman of that time. But even without the idea of covering the head, it's still the idea of, from a modesty standpoint, when the hair is down and flowing, it's sexy. And when the hair is up and bind, it's a different type of look. And you can see this today in any type of Hollywood movie or any type of society today. When a woman's hair is up and she wants it to be sexy, she unbinds it and she shakes it and she gets it all out. And she'll make up her hair and do her hair to add this sexiness to her. And this sexiness is part of the immodesty of today's world. So, from a modesty standpoint, a woman covering her head would be ideal. And there are modest and immodest ways to cover a person's head. And again, I'm not saying if a woman doesn't cover her head, she's not saved or she's sinning. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that she should be separated from the community if she wants to let her sexiness show to attract other men and to destroy the community and spread this tazarit, or this evil desires throughout the community. And this is what a woman does when she reveals her sexiness to men other than her husband. And so this is something we need to look at. The hair should be bound up, at least. I mean, if you're not going to wear a head covering, at least bound it up. A woman having longer hair than a man, yes. But a woman, showing off her sexiness to other men, no. And so the scriptures say that the righteous woman's hair was bound and most likely covered. But the unrighteous woman's hair is to be flowing. And it says even that in the scriptures over and over again that her nakedness would be revealed in her punishment. I will strip off her clothes, reveal her legs, expose her private parts, and this will be part of her shame and part of her punishment. And this only doesn't go for women, this is men as well. For men to expose their bodies, it's part of their shame. But again, we take pride in this today. So this message is for men just as much for women. But this week's Torah portion specifically talks about destroying the community. And I am telling you from my experience, from a man's experience, and from a modesty experience, when a woman's hair is out and flowing and glowing, and also, it's not of Yahweh, folks. So ladies out there, listen up. If you feel convicted to cover your hair, cover your hair. Wear a head covering. There are many different types of head coverings. Some women might just think, I'm going to wear a baseball cap, or others might want to wear some kind of do-rag or something like this. Well, again, whatever your conviction is, that's where your desires will be, and you got to fill out your convictions. Don't try to do something you're not convicted of. However, if you're truly in the Word and you're truly in Messiah, your conviction should be to cover up your sexiness, or to hide your sexiness and only revealed for your husband. And we want to think about that. Now, if you don't feel convicted to cover up, ladies, at least don't make your hair sexy for the world. Bound up your hair to where it's short and it's not flowing all over the place and not adding the sexiness to attract a man. I always say, high heels, makeup, tight clothes, these things are what design is, and the world uses to enhance a woman's sexiness, which still can be used in the right way for their husband in privacy and not for the world to see. Because if you think it's going to attract your husband, well, what do you think won't attract every other man out there as well? But these are things the world created to make you sexy. Well, there's something that Yahweh created before the world created their thing to make a woman sexy, and that is the hair. A woman's hair is the natural beauty and sexiness of Yahweh, and that should be shown to the woman's husband, not the world. So, ladies out there, don't destroy the community or create a negative root in the community, and bind up your hair, whether it's head covering or at least it's bound up. Do that for the sake of the community, and you will be blessed for it. And there's a lot in the scriptures this week that talk about the hair in general, because in this week we also get into number 6 about the Nazarene oath and taking a Nazarene oath. And it was very interesting because for the men, they were told when they took this oath, they were to not cut their hair, they were to let their hair grow long. And this study is not going to be about the different lengths of hair and types of hair, but I will tell you that there's a significance to hair and what Yahweh wanted us to do and how He wanted us to do it in our appearance. There's a message that's sent out through our hair. And it's not only the hair on our head, men, it's the beards. Men and women, it's our body hair. There's a message in appearance that without saying a word, it shows where we're at and who we are and where our heart is at and what we're doing and who we're set apart for. So during these times, if a man had long hair, somebody knew that he was most likely taking a Nazarene vow. But if he didn't, today's times is completely different, because if a man has long hair like a woman, it often means that he wants to look more like a woman than he does a man. So it can be quite confusing today. But still, it doesn't change the fact that hair sends a message. The hair on the beard, the hair on the head, the hair on the body, it sends a message. And we can get into another study another time of what the connection is, what these messages are, and the length of hair, even the color of hair. That's another issue we have today. Hair coloring. Yahweh's wisdom shows a man that he has a gray beard, or even gray hair on a man or a woman, shows there's some type of wisdom out there. Because with aging comes wisdom. However, today with the unhealthy food and the unhealthy nutrients and the lack of nutrients in the food, somebody will turn gray much before they were meant to, or much before their wisdom comes in. So it means something else today. So there's different messages sent. And we look at the Egyptians and the Canaanites, how they used to trim and shave certain parts of their body and certain parts of their hair, which went against what Yahweh wanted us to do, because He said, do not mimic the ways of the Egyptians and so on. But folks, hair sends a message. Yahweh put the hair there for a reason, and the message it sends is there for a reason. So we are not to destroy what Yahweh put there, and in essence destroy the community along with that. So that's one of the things that came out for me when I was reading this week's Torah Parashah, because there's so much information to talk about this week, but we neglect these things, such as hair, and it's on one level not the most important part of Yahweh's plan or communication, but on the other hand it is, because He gives us ways to communicate with others, and we look at the way the world today looks at somebody with a big beard or a lady that has underarm hair, and they're like, no, that just doesn't look nice. What they really mean is that doesn't look sexy. You know, and a husband to say that, I don't want to see my wife with hair on her legs or under her hands because that doesn't look sexy and that doesn't turn me on. I like my wife to have smooth legs and shaven underarms. Well, hey men out there, don't you think that'll turn other men on also? And I'm not saying the reason a woman needs to have hair on her legs is not to turn on the world. But at least if you're going to shave your legs and your armpits for your husband's women, at least cover them up so the rest of the world doesn't go and seeing them. We have to take this message of modesty seriously because however it is, the enemy is going to get to the community if we're not taking a strong stand for what Yahweh wanted us to do. And there's a health message behind having hair on the body and not taking away what Yahweh put there and destroying it. And he clearly tells us in there in the scriptures, like he says, that men are not to destroy the beard and so on. Now, if it's something that happens naturally, if a man is just naturally bald or his hair's naturally falling out, that's one thing. And I am not saying that a man shouldn't get a haircut or a woman shouldn't brush her hair or vice versa. I'm not saying that. But there's specific instructions on how to cut the hair, how to wear the hair, and exactly what to do. And taking some hair dye and changing the color that Yahweh designed your hair to be because you want to change your appearance because you don't like the way it looks. Wearing this makeup for your hair and these hair colorings. I mean, first of all, I'm not putting anything on or in my body that has the word dye in it. And hair dye. You know, you might not want to hear this message, people out there. But this is a message that goes right along with the scriptures. And if we want to not be separated from the community, because if we don't separate ourselves from the community, or each other from the community, guess what? Yahweh will. So if we're not holy and following what he told us to do, we're going to be separated one way or the other. So I don't want you to be separated, folks. I want you to be blessed. So to be blessed, keep the Torah, follow the Torah, read the Torah, understand the Torah, and strive to let your convictions go along with what Torah says. And do it with joy and understand that Yah just wants the best for you, and so do I. You know, it says in the scriptures, you know, I have no, pride or no happiness and joy in seeing the wicked suffer. I don't want to see them being put to death. I don't want to see them living this sadness. I want to see them have the joy that Yahweh's blessings has to offer. So, folks, this is Paul Neeson with this week's Torah Life Ministries reading. If you have any questions or comments, just post them below the video, and we're happy to talk to them and discuss them here on Torah Life videos. Until then, everybody, have a blessed Shabbat this coming Shabbat, and we'll see you again soon. Shalom, shalom.
Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways.